What's going on, and welcome back. So this will be the first video in the series of actually testing shock absorption hitches on my channel. Now, we've done several videos in preparation for this, including videos where we've filled up these bags full of sand so we can get the tongue weight dialed in right to 2,000 pounds, which is actually really important because without that much tongue weight, some of the hitches we're using won't actually function properly. So we want to be sure that anytime we're using a hitch that has a certain characteristic, that we're using it with the correct amount of tongue weight, the correct amount of trailer weight. Otherwise, you may either be overloading the system or underloading the system. In the case of GENY, you really have to be sure you get above at least the minimum amount for their hitches to work in a suspension type way. If you don't, you're essentially just using a traditional hitch at that point that's just really large, because the suspension portion of it won't actually go into effect until you hit a certain amount of weight. That said, the first video, which was yesterday where we actually towed, was our baseline video. We used the GENY hitch, which is right here. This is their Mega Duty hitch. It's a 32,000 pound rated hitch. We used that with no suspension technology built into it, just to determine a baseline. We gathered information and statistics on how it was functioning, and I gave you kind of an opinion on how I felt that hitch performed. And I think most people probably know, if they've just towed with a conventional hitch with no shock absorption built into it, it can be a pretty harsh ride, but for the most part, people deal with it, right? There's trucking companies, there are hotshot drivers, there are construction folks out there, there are conventional towers out there that deal with that all the time. Shoot, even if you have an RV, you probably deal with that all the time. So is there really a benefit to moving to a suspension style hitch? And that's what we're trying to determine, because you can spend a lot of money on one of these hitches. Most of these hitches are well over $500. Some of them approach $1,000. So if you're going to spend that much money on a hitch, does it make sense to go to a suspension style hitch or just a super heavy duty conventional hitch? Again, keep in mind, whenever we're talking about hitches, you do have to get the one that is dialed in for the load you're going to be handling. And what I specifically mean is, when you look at brands like GENY, they have a 10,000 pound, a 16,000 pound, a 21,000 pound, and a 32,000 pound version of their Boss series suspension hitch. And if you get just the biggest, baddest hitch, because that's what you want to put behind your truck, and you get the 21 or the 32,000 pound version, if you don't have at least 1,800 plus pounds worth of tongue weight resting on that hitch, there's really no point, because the suspension characteristics of the hitch won't go into effect until you've loaded it up to those minimums. And again, what's the point of getting a suspension hitch, spending that much, if it's not actually going to do anything for you, because you're underloading what the minimum requirements are for that suspension component to come into effect? That said, first hitch that actually has suspension characteristics built into it that we'll be featuring in a towing evaluation is this shocker hitch. So let's take a closer look at it. So I can't tell you how many comments and emails I've gotten from folks asking me to review this product. What's my opinion on it? I do know that Shocker makes a few different types of hitches now. They make some that use, I think, more of a rubber bushing technology, and then they make the airbag one, which is the one that everyone asks about. The specific one you're looking at in front of you is called their HD. They have an HD Max, which is actually black, and I think it's the same thing, except it's black. And then they have a standard version, which has lower capacities. I think it's 12,000 pounds capacity. But the one you're looking at in front of you is a 20,000 pound capacity hitch with a 2,000 pound capacity tongue weight and an airbag on it. And this is a pretty cool setup. But with Shocker, you have to be very, very careful on the hitch that you purchase for your application. Mainly because, unlike some hitches, you can't move this to a rise position. And if you want to go to a rise, then you typically have to get a ball which has a rise built into it, which we showed on a previous video. But you can't take this whole assembly out and flip it over like you can on some. Probably because it just won't work properly, and because the airbag won't have the room it needs. The airbag rests underneath the receiver, and this metal plate right here rests right at the bottom of the receiver, and that's what essentially acts as the stop for the airbag up there. Whenever you set this up, what you essentially do is you unscrew this Schrader valve, you add air to it until this bushing right here compresses completely against this piece of metal, or in between here. You see how there's movement right there? Well, as we load weight onto it, that movement's going to increase. It's going to push down on here, and it's going to open that up quite a bit. Then we're simply going to add air, and we'll bring that back together so that's sandwiched nicely between those two pieces of steel, and that means we're at the proper PSI. So typically, when I was testing this yesterday, it was between about 48 and 50 PSI, but because we've shifted the weight around, and because we've now added more tongue weight to get us from 1,800 pounds right to 2,000 pounds, we'll probably have to add a little bit more. But the way this hitch essentially works is, as you add air here, it's going to cause this to go up. And this is your pivot point that this pivots around. These are your pins that you use to adjust the height of your coupler, keeping in mind that, again, if you don't get the right one, you might find yourself in a scenario where the hitch is going to sit too low or it's going to sit too high, and you won't have the adjustability you need. So be sure to call the folks at eTrailer, talk to them about your towing needs and what you're specifically trying to do. If you need a clevis, if you need different types of adapters here, they sell those as well as aftermarket accessories for the shocker hitch. So they have everything you probably need, but you really should call and talk to one of their experts so they can guide you to the right parts that you might need to make sure that you're going to be able to tow the type of trailer you plan on towing. With the coupler, we have 21,000 pounds worth of capacity here. This is a very, very heavy duty Demco easy latch coupler. So we are going to be good to go. Let's get everything hitched up. This trailer, the way it's configured now with this much weight, definitely adds a tremendous amount of tongue weight to this truck, and it will cause it to drop quite a bit. So let me show you what that looks like. Okay, let's drop the load down and see how the shocker reacts to it. Yeah, you can definitely see the truck drops quite a bit under this much load. Okay, so what we're going to do next is add air, because we want that to close up. And adding air is pretty easy. Just attach your air compressor. I suppose you could use a tire pump too if you wanted, but this is a little quicker for me. Okay, 48 PSI. Again, not that much. And then you got to unscrew it pretty quickly or you'll lose air and that'll open back up. But this is what it should look like. This is what the recommendations are in terms of the amount of air you need to add. Let's get everything pinned up, chained up, connected, and ready to hit the road. Okay, we are good to go. So I will have a G-force analyzer or sensor inside of the truck that will be mounted to a fixed mounted location on the front of the dash, just to kind of give us an idea of what everything looks like. Oh, that was important to put back on. Probably would have lost that. So we'll have some really good comparative analysis data to be able to compare hitch to hitch and see how well they performed. But I use a little clothes hanger right here. I just wrap it around the top and it gives me the ability to keep the chains from dragging. But yeah, we have cameras mounted. We're going to record this so you guys get a first-hand view of what this thing looks like functioning, and you'll actually be able to see it before I do. Okay, so we have our camera on. We have some data recording right here. Just gives me some peace of mind in terms of seeing what I'm towing back there. We got some cameras on the back, so hopefully this will provide the data that you all are looking for. It'll give me some really, really good information in terms of what's actually happening and what's taking place. But yeah, you can see the trailer nice and well back there. You can see the shocker hitch. And you can see the shock data up here on the phone, which is only being used as a sensor platform right now. Okay, so right now this is a pretty smooth road, not a heck of a lot to it. The road we're about to turn onto, though, is not smooth. It is a really, really rough road. Actually, it looks like they might be doing pothole repair right now. this street to 30 miles an hour, which is the speed limit. You know, it actually feels quite a bit more dampened. There's some bumps here that are pretty dang rough, and I can definitely tell that a lot of the sharpness has been taken out. Now the truck is still an F450, so it still rides pretty rough, as you can tell. A lot of that's the front suspension on the truck, but it feels a little bit more tame in the back, and that's a lot of tongue weight, so it's a lot of weight that's pushing down on the back. And again, it feels like it is taking some of the shock out of it. Not bad, actually. It's not as bad as it was when I was using the Gen Y that had no shock absorption built into it, for sure. And I can definitely tell you that, again, that sharp edge, whenever you hit a real hard bump and it just kind of radiates through your spine, it's not as bad. And you can probably just tell by all the rattling noises you're hearing that this is not a fun road to drive down. So now we're going to move to a highway that has a faster speed limit. Give us the ability to see how it performs on a highway. And you can really feel that tongue right back there, though. I got a little bit of, I don't know if I want to call it like a chucking feeling, but a little bit of, I don't really know how to describe it. It felt a little bit like chucking, and I'm assuming that's probably movement of the airbag when I was coming to a stop. But it's not bad at all. It's a pretty okay feeling, if that makes sense. It doesn't feel like it's making it ride any rougher or any sketchier or anything like that. It just feels okay, to be honest with you. Alright, so now we're at highway speeds. Get an idea of what that's like. So we're slowing down. We're going to take a turn onto a road that's not as bad as the road we came from a second ago, but it's still pretty rough, and there are some nice jarring moments to it as well. I'm really interested in kind of evaluating what the camera footage back there looks like with the airbag and the movement. This isn't bad at all. This actually feels quite a bit better than just the standard Hitch. And you hit some of those bumps, though, and you can definitely feel it. So it's not as if it takes all of the harshness away, especially from the front suspension where it doesn't really have any impact at all. Right? We're not doing anything with the front to reduce the shock over there. But again, from the back, it's not terribly bad. Had my camera mount fall off, so I had to reposition that. But yeah, it's going to be really cool to see what the side-by-side G-force analysis looks like when everything's said and done. Hopefully, it's accurate. You've got some very good information. But yeah, you saw that bump there. That's a pretty intense spike right there. Again, the reason why I'm taking the readings from the dash is because that's a better representation of what you're going to feel in the cab. Alright, so we are on another pretty smooth road. There's a couple big bumps on this road, but nothing crazy. There's kind of one of them. That's not too bad. There's kind of another one. Again, not terrible. We'll see what the data looks like. Okay, so we're back. What did you guys think? So before I completely disconnected, I wanted to answer a question that probably is going to get asked, and that is, do you have to add any air after you have already hitched up or after you've towed for a little while? And I can see that there's some space here right now, so I don't know if there's a best practice to add some air just to get that bushing right back up there again. But, you know, the short distance that we traveled, it definitely did compress it a little bit more to where it probably would make sense to add a little bit more air just to bring it up back to where it needs to be. But, you know, worked well. I honestly feel like it did make a difference. I don't know if it was a groundbreaking difference, but it definitely did feel a little better. What I can honestly tell you, though, is that the effect it could have on a trailer, specifically an RV, something heavy that has stuff inside of it that could get damaged, is probably going to be more profound than the effect it's going to have on the driver in the vehicle. So this is one of those things that it just might make sense to get if you are towing an RV or something like maybe a race trailer, something that could get damaged if it's subjected to too much harshness while it's going down the road. But very cool. Again, we collected data on this one again, so whenever we're done with all of these, I should be able to give you kind of a side-by-side comparison on what the G-force meter indicated. I don't know how accurate it's really going to be since it's placed up front in the cab. If I put it back here, it probably would work a little better. That said, though, the whole point of this is kind of to see what reaction I have from a driving perspective and possibly what reaction takes place from a trailering perspective. But I think that we have enough data to at least give you some good information on if I feel getting a suspension hitch like this is worth it. Anyways, we're going to get everything disconnected. We're going to wrap this video up. I hope you enjoyed it. If you haven't had a chance, take a moment, subscribe so you are getting all of these notifications whenever we have the next video come up on these hitches. So this is the first of the suspension hitches that we've actually evaluated. What did you guys think? We still have quite a few more. So these three right here are all going to be tested in the next couple of videos. If you want to see which one's up next, hit that subscribe button so whenever the video comes out, you can see what it's all about. Anyways, I sure hope you enjoyed this video. I hope this video has been informative for you, and I hope it helps you make an informed purchasing decision if you plan on spending your hard-earned money on one of these extremely expensive hitches that, again, has shock absorption built into it. Guys, if you haven't had a chance, please take a moment, subscribe to the channel, give me a thumbs up, and we'll talk to you again very soon.